Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Moose Talks. A little later on, we're going to be talking to Jay Hill, the interim leader of Wexit Canada. He, of course, you probably know him better as the former Conservative MP for Prince George Peace River. He was in that seat for 17 years, so we'll be chatting with him about why he's all about Wexit now and why he became leader. That coming up in just a bit. But first, we're going to chat with Brad Sperling, the PRRD chair, all about the old fort landslide, which suddenly shifted about 8 days ago. So, Brad, thank you so much for chatting with us and for taking a minute to talk with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, Brad, why don't we start with kind of an update on the situation, kind of as of this morning, if you can give us one. The slide seems to be slowing down.
Yeah, the information Modi gave us yesterday, they say it is slowing down, but still moving approximately a meter an hour. And they're saying it's too wide to monitor or continue monitoring at this time, or to put a road safely across for people.
Too wide, as in, you said it's too wide for people to safely.
Well, it's moving.
Yeah.
Consistently too fast.
I see. So it's slowing down, but still moving. All right.
Yes.
How many residents, first of all, how many residents live in Old Fort, and how many have since evacuated since the slide started moving again?
There's roughly between 125 to 150. 52 have registered with ESS, and the rest are still in the Old Fort community.
Sheltering in place. Okay. And I think I saw you guys did a survey recently. Those other people who are kind of sheltering in place say they aren't really concerned yet about supplies or anything. Is that correct?
Well, they're actually doing two surveys. The first one was short term, hoping that would end by now. But now they're doing the long term, preparing for water, sewer, garbage, get people in and out. Now it looks like by river at this time.
I see. So kind of similar to when it moved in 2018 when people were leaving by the river. Okay. Do you have any sense about sort of what the next phase of this will be? Like, what has to happen for you to say everyone has to evacuate, or we have to start moving people by river? Are we at that point yet, or is there still something that could change before?
No, we're not there. Two things have to happen in order for us to put an evacuation order. That would either be an order from the province or the geotechnical people to tell us those people are in danger. But right now, the board is not considering any kind of an evacuation order until we're told that.
Okay. Is it entirely up to you as to when you can issue the evacuation order? I mean, as you say, you're waiting to hear more, but can you decide unilaterally, or is it kind of the province? Like, do you work together with the province to do that?
I think we do have the power to do it unilaterally, but we're not going to.
Okay, I see.
If you look at what happened the last time, we were advised to bring in our own geotechnical people, and at that time, no one knew what the slide was. And they couldn't tell us the people were safe, so we moved ahead. We've learned a lot more since that time, and this time, someone's really going to have to tell us that those people are in danger. And so far, they keep telling us they're not.
Okay, so do you mean then that compared to last time, you're not prepared to say, to use the term, pull the trigger on an evacuation quite as hastily? You're going to wait until they say danger is imminent to do so? Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, like I said, unless the province orders us to, or the geotechnical authorities or people tell us that those people are in danger.
Okay. How much info are you getting from the Ministry of Transportation on this? Because they're providing updates and you're publishing them on the PRRD website. Are they being forthcoming, or are you kind of struggling to hear more from them at this moment?
Well, they went for a couple days without any updates. Their monitoring equipment was down, and now it's back up. I believe they're doing LiDAR, which takes some time to assess each pass. I would like them at least to say, how long does it take to assess that information? We're not experts in that, and that's the kind of information we need. Just tell us. We learned that from the original slide. Our biggest issue was communication.
And I suppose a lack of, in some cases, where you didn't know what was happening when with the ministry.
That's correct.
Okay.
Like, we didn't know, but we even fell down by just saying people days. There's no change. We have no information today, and we've learned that, and that's why this time every day at 3:00, staff is putting out an update.
I see. Okay. Is there concern that, or do you have any reason for concern, I guess, for the slide to get worse or speed up again? Do you have any kind of information on what the likelihood of that happening is? Do you know?
No, they haven't given us that information, and they're still analyzing their studies.
Right, so still lots of unknowns in that regards.
There is, and
Yeah.
the district is just preparing as we're supposed to.
Yeah, the kind of for any kind of scenario in that case.
Yeah.
In regards to the road that was kind of the temporary road, I should say. That was put there after the last slide, kind of more than a year passed essentially where that slide didn't move or moved very minimally. Has there been lots of discussion about what a new road would look like, or if there's other spots where a road could be that might be safer so that a situation like this may not happen again, or is that something that's been discussed a lot?
That's actually the biggest question moving forward. I mean, people want to know what their future is.
Yeah.
It's up to the province and ministry to give them a permanent and safe road and deal with that slide. You got to remember, ministry is responsible for the road. Mm-hmm. The slide is on Crown land. So they have to decide what the future of those people is and give them some comfort. They can't be going through this every 2 years.
Absolutely. Are you or the PR board like in on that conversation at all as to where it could be if there was a different road kind of plowed through to the community?
No, not at this time.
Yeah.
The meetings are EMBC's meetings. The district staff are there and ministry staff are there, and then they give us their daily updates.
Okay. And you've already touched on this, but I guess how many discussions would you say you've had, like with the board, with the ministry, even if at all, about the likelihood of the slide moving again, and what you would say? Because as you say, you're more prepared this time. Even the people who live in Old Fort have said, a lot of them have said they're more prepared this time because it happened already. Have there been discussions about the likelihood that this slide could move again, and what maybe if there was even a percentage of chance that it could move again, or was the hope that it just wouldn't?
We've been asking for that information since the first slide. Mm-hmm. Like, who's doing the studies on it? It's Crown land. It's Ministry of Transportation road. We put an FOI in January for all information, and we were turned down. And then yesterday we got an email saying that they're going to review our request.
All right.
I mean, this has been going on for 18 months.
And I have to ask, FOI, by the way, Freedom of Information Request.
Sorry.
That's okay. Why they gave you a reason as to why they couldn't release that information. Do you understand the reason, or have any sense of sort of the thinking behind why the ministry wouldn't release it to you?
No, and I may not have it word for word, but it had something to do with may endanger law enforcement. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to us? We're lay people up here, and that's why we asked for a review of our FOI. I mean, we've heard that they were in-depth studies on that slide since it started. Mm-hmm. We didn't hear about that until last November in a media release. So why have we been kept out? And I don't understand why a local government should have to put an FOI in on the government to get an answer.
for something that's affecting citizens in the local government. Absolutely. All right. Well, looking forward, let's even kind of for the next week, Brad. Where are we at in terms of the emergency kind of the center that's been set up? Is there things that are going to be happening in the next week that you're hoping to get answers about, or is it still kind of all just up in the air because the government's been so not forthcoming in the past about this kind of information about the slide and what's happening?
Well, most of that's up in the air because, I mean, it's been monitored. We're relying on the province or ministry to guide us that way. Our job is to be prepared to get the services in that the people need, whether they're in the ESS or hunkered down in the community. We need to concentrate on those services.
Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt. And as you said, you don't have a timeline on how long it will take report to be made public to you, and how long it kind of takes. Is that correct?
No, we have no idea.
Okay. All right, Brad. Well, you're very busy right now, as you usually are, so I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us about this. Obviously, a story we'll be following very closely in the next days, weeks, and months, though hopefully it doesn't take that long to get things sorted out. But, Brad, thank you very much for talking to us today.
No, thank you.
All right, that's Brad Sperling, the PRRD chair. We'll be right back to talk with Jay Hill right after this on Moose Talks.
Get cracking on your trivia because you could win some awesome prizes, including gift cards to Safeway, Fort City Chrysler, and Tupperware. Play on our Facebook page at Energetic City every Tuesday afternoon at 12:15 for your chance to win with the Moose FM Trivia Hour, hosted by Scott Brooks. Visit our website at moosefm.ca under contests for more details. The Moose FM Trivia Hour is powered by FSJ Return It and Fort City Chrysler. Home Hardware is proud to be 100% Canadian owned and proud to serve Fort St. John. Even though this year we are celebrating Canada Day differently, what's not different is spending time with your family and celebrating Canada's 153rd birthday. As a Canadian, we are tough and always up for a challenge. Be proud to be Canadian. Happy Canada Day from the crew at Home Hardware, Fort St. John.
I know lots of kids say their grandmas make the best homemade food, but my grandma is so good she has her own kitchen. Mary Jane's Kitchen and Catering. She makes everything herself and it's so good, especially her spaghetti and lasagna. She even makes sandwiches for a bunch of places. I can't remember them all though, I'm only 9.
Find Mary Jane's delicious sandwiches at Petro Canada Truck Stop, Chevron, Kelly's Convenience Store, Husky, and V&M by the high school. Mary Jane's Kitchen and Catering, also on Facebook.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
All right, we're back on Moose Talks. I'm Dub Craig, and I'm joined now, and very excited to be joined now, by Jay Hill, the interim leader of Wexit Canada. You also know him as the longtime member of Parliament for Prince George, Peace River, Conservative MP. How's it going today, Jay?
Very well, Dub. And yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for taking out some time to join us today. So let's start with this. What prompted you to take over the leadership role of Wexit? Because Peter Downing resigned. Was this something you were asked to do, or was it something you decided to do to kind of bridge the gap between this and what I assume will be a leadership contest that's forthcoming?
Well, Deb, I know it surprised and even, dare I say, shocked quite a number of people that are close to me when I made this decision, but it wasn't a quick decision. I've been writing newspaper columns and speaking out about the issue of what I view as the mistreatment of Western Canada by what's referred to as the Golden Triangle of Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, that area of our country. I've been speaking out about that for quite some time. So this has been growing. And in the last while, I've increasingly been dismayed by the direction the country's going. I think that feeling of frustration and outright anger at times is shared by thousands of other Western Canadians. And then it's really out of concern for my grandchildren and what my generation will be leaving to the next generation. And right now, it looks like it's going to be a heck of a mess. for our children and grandchildren to inherit. So all of that kind of motivated me to join with this group of people and step forward to try to build a credible alternative.
I see. Now, I guess the assumption is in time for, say, the next federal election, whenever that may be, you're hoping to have like the full-time leader installed by then. Is that correct?
That's right, Dub. Our short-term objectives of our board, which is only a week and a half old now, so we're just in our infancy with this party. There's 8 of us on the board. We're all of like mind when it comes to the central thrust. Our short-term objectives are to continue to build credibility for the party, to sell memberships, as many as possible, in as short a time period as possible, to build financial resources through donations. And then medium term, and this is partly dependent on whether the COVID pandemic actually allows us to plan a convention, but we would hope to plan a very successful founding convention followed by a leadership race. In fact, the leadership race, of course, may be held in conjunction with that, and the final decision or voting would be at the convention for a new leader. I've made it very clear that I only intend to serve as interim leader until such time as the party membership can elect a permanent leader.
Okay. Now, if you've already made references, you've been speaking out on this issue for a long time, and I would say, I mean, basically your entire political career. You, of course, were at the kind of roots of the Reform Party. You ran in 1987 on the Reform ticket, if I remember correctly. So Western alienation's not a new topic, a subject for you. What do you think has changed? Because, of course, you were in the government of Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper represented a riding in Calgary, lived there, has lived there for quite a time. So we had a prime minister who was from the West. That changed in 2015 or 2014 when Trudeau was elected, of course. But why not work with the Conservatives to sort of see them perhaps get reelected into power and then work with them to kind of soothe Western alienation, as it were? Why is this a better option than doing that?
Well, quite simply, it's because of my experience as a 17-year veteran of the Parliament of Canada. I had the pleasure and the honor, as you say, to represent Prince George Peace River in the Parliament for 17 years, and the last few years as a cabinet minister in Stephen Harper's government. I came to realize over the last decade since I left public life that Confederation just is not working. I do not believe it'll work in the future. And as quick I mean, we could talk for hours about this, Dub, but as quick an explanation as I can give you is that if whoever, there's a leadership race underway right now, if whoever wins that does become the next prime minister and we have a Conservative government, there's no doubt in my mind we will have better government than we do under Prime Minister Trudeau and the Liberals. No question. It'll be a fairer government for Western Canada, but we will never get full fairness, and here's why. It's simply because the bulk of the members of Parliament, and therefore the bulk of the votes that determine the next government, come from Central Canada. You know, there's I think somewhere around 199 members of Parliament in Ontario and Quebec, and only 114 in all of the West. So even if Peter MacKay or Aaron O'Toole becomes the next prime minister, just as Stephen Harper and I and our cabinet had to do, you have to pay attention to the views and the wishes of Central Canadians. It's predominant in our system, and therefore it doesn't matter whose government, they're going to be attempting to appease Central Canada, where the votes are, where the seats are, because that's how they will stay in power. And that therein lies the problem. And of course, our system originally was designed that the Senate, the so-called chamber of sober second thought, was supposed to look after any regional unfairness. It was supposed to protect the less populated regions of our country, but it doesn't do that. The way it was structured is Quebec and Ontario are two of the regions. They each have 24 senators, and we only have 24 in the entire West. Mm-hmm. So obviously, both in the lower chamber, in the House of Commons, we're outvoted. We see that all the time, especially under this Liberal government of Justin Trudeau. With bills like the tanker ban on the North Coast that prevents us from achieving world prices for our product, for our oil. Other bills that prevent pipelines being built, a bill that imposes a national sales tax on the West and especially on our farmers. Gun control. You can run down a long list of grievances, Dub, and it's passed through the chamber. It gets to the Senate, and we don't have enough votes there either under our system. And so the Confederation is set up to continue to fleece the West, and I'm fed up with it. And that's the bottom line.
So what does Western separation look like kind of to you and to Wexit at this point? I don't believe you put out a whole kind of platform yet, but kind of in brief, what happens? What needs to happen in order for Wexit to kind of achieve its goal of perhaps forming a new country out of Western Canada?
Well, that's a really good question, and of course, at this point in time, all of this is so hypothetical that it's difficult to give an accurate answer. First of all, I'll address the issue of our platform policies. The new board has taken a collective decision. We've only had 2 board meetings thus far, last week and again one last night, and we have decided that it would be inappropriate for us to design policies and a platform by 8 of us, or for that matter, by myself as leader, if I sat down and drafted some policies. So the policies are going to wait for the convention. We'll structure it similar to what we did when we started the Reform Party, which the individual riding associations, once we get them up and organized, will submit resolutions. They'll be debated on the floor of a convention, and that's how the policy will be developed. In the meantime, our board is working quite diligently to produce sort of a list of guiding principles that we can communicate, and I can communicate as the interim leader, to people and to encourage them to take out a membership and join in our efforts. On the issue of sort of the process, how do we see this developing? I mean, we're not completely or even remotely adverse to the efforts of Jason Kenney and Scott Moe and their governments in Saskatchewan and Alberta, for example, as they try to get a fairer deal. Jason Kenney, of course, struck the Fair Deal panel. They have a report. They have a number of recommendations that they're working on. We're not opposed to trying to, for those governments to try to achieve greater autonomy from the federal government in a wide range of issues at all. It's just that on the major issues, pipelines, the fiscal imbalance, the so-called equalization formula that sees billions of dollars flow from the West primarily to Quebec, those issues I do not believe will be negotiated and will be decided. And eventually that will drive Western Canadians to seek independence because, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that's what we've been doing for over 150 years. And so how do I see this? I think that we hope to run candidates, as you say, in the next federal election. We're poised to do that. We've got all our papers in with Elections Canada. We will contest every riding at some point in time in Western Canada. If I reflect back when I first ran in 1988, the Reform Party of Canada was less than a year old, and we didn't win any seats. We could only organize in 88 ridings in the West at that time. As I said, now we have 107 in Western Canada. I think there was less than 100 at that time, 93 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we hope to organize, we hope to run candidates, we hope to elect people, obviously, and then, like the Bloc Québécois, those members of Parliament would be free to not have to try to appease the voters and the power base in central Canada. They would be free to represent their constituents and not have to bring forward unfortunate compromise that we had to as a Conservative Party and as the Conservative Party will have to in the future.
Okay. One last question, and it's local, and we only got about a minute left here. But I'm curious. You haven't kind of lived in the piece for the last 10 years or so, but of course you were here a long time before that. You were born here. Do you have a sense of what kind of appetite there might be for Wexit in the piece in northern British Columbia?
I do. I'm very fortunate that one of my former campaign managers and a longtime friend, Greg Hammond, is sitting on our inaugural board. Mm-hmm. So he brings that perspective from my old riding from northeastern British Columbia. Greg is a very common sense, solid individual, credible individual. And so we're counting on him to bring the voice and the views of northeastern British Columbia to our board. And according to Greg, there's a lot of interest. I mean, how much interest? It's like, what are the numbers in Alberta and Saskatchewan? Mm-hmm. We're not certain, but we intend to find out. And over the next little while, we'll have a good indication by a growth in membership, how quickly it grows and where those members are located.
All right, Jay, we'll have to leave it there for now. But thank you very much for taking some time to talk with us today.
My pleasure. I hope I'm back on your program soon.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be right back to wrap things up right here on Moose Talks.